Oh, you guys must be the suckers. Excuse me, I mean our precious guest for today. Follow me over here and we will start the museum tour. First, we will be watching a short film. Just take a seat wherever you like. I'm just gonna go prepare the video. Okay, now how did this work again? Was it this button? Wait, that's my OnlyFans folder. Let me try this again. Ever since the dawn of mankind, certain questions have been endlessly plaguing our minds. Where do we come from? Is there a purpose to life? But most importantly, how can we make visual novels sell more copies? However, the answer was always in front of our eyes. Well, more accurately, it was our own eyes. As a species, we humans have greatly developed our sight to better deal with dangerous beasts and other ferocious creatures. For that reason, the success of visual novels hinges not only on their inherent quality, but also on how they are presented. After all, you kind of need to trick your audience into thinking they are buying this, when in reality, they are buying this. Some might call this false advertising, to which I would say, but let's not fret over the details and instead appreciate the craft work that goes into these little pieces of art. So without further ado, it's time we finally step into the world of visual novel cover arts and uncover the undiscovered and uncovered beauty of these cover treasures. Well, I'm glad that crap is finally over. Anyway, let's move on to the actual gallery. What better way to start this tour than going back to where it all started, the early 90s? This era was pretty much the Wild West, both on the cover artwork as well as the game's contents themselves. For instance, some developers would go as far as to include secret codes that would remove all mosaics entirely from their games. As far as covers go, during these years, a standardized style of visual composition wasn't yet established, which means that developers would put on the cover what they thought their consumers needed to know, such as whether the games had a darker or cheerful vibe, or which type of art style it offered. I guess you could call this the chiaroscuro era of Eroge, especially if you consider how many would include heavily contrasting colors on top of dark backgrounds. Seeing as there was no sense of cohesion between all these titles, it might be hard to point one as the representative cover of that era, with one exception. What you are now about to see is one of the most historically important cover art from any Eroge ever. This single piece of imagery would drastically change the future of the medium in ways that no one would have expected it. Behold the artwork of Saori Bishoujotachi no Yakata. You might now be thinking that I'm simply exaggerating, but to fully understand the impact of this cover, we need to properly contextualize it. The year is 1991. Not long before, it was revealed that the culprit behind a series of deeply disturbing crimes was a man obsessed with otaku media. This created a general sense of unrest and stigmatization towards manga, anime, and games that included content inappropriate for younger audiences. Within this context, upon entering an electronics store, a young kid saw a copy of Saori sitting there on the shelves. Its artwork quickly caught his attention, so he decided to shoplift it and take it home. At this point, you might think that the authorities would step in and reprimand the kid, but that's not what happened. Instead, what actually occurred was that they began an official search on the studio responsible for the game and even arrested the company's director. As a result, stronger regulations would be imposed on adult game developers, which would culminate in the formation of Flourishing, the Japanese rating system for adult games that is still being used to this day. And all of this can be attributed to this one single artwork, this one imagery that lured the kid to steal it and play it. Well, at least I think it's this one. No idea if there were any cover variations. But speaking of which, nowadays with the success of the Switch, visual novels are as much of a console experience as they are a PC experience. This porting trend, however, didn't appear out of nowhere, but was rather a gradual process, with some titles materializing on the Sega Saturn and later the PlayStation. Back then, these ports were known as the consumer version. Just give me that already. Anyway, as I was saying, in most cases, they would just reuse the original artwork, just slightly editing it so that it fitted inside a standard square-sized CD jewel case. However, some developers would redo these covers, and in some cases, you could see a slight shift in how they approach their visual aesthetic. Let's take Everburst Error and Desire as examples. As you can see, the original artworks used heavy color contrasts akin to what was common in that era. But move over to the Saturn version, and we start seeing far more ambitious compositions. The reality is that, with the advent of more complex narratives in adult games, developers wanted to properly convey that their works weren't simple Eero experiences, but rather fully fledged stories with complex characters. This portrayal of narrative depth is present in the cover art of games like Double Cast, with its representation of the duality of the main character, seen in its tasteful visual structure. Likewise, the use of color in Leaf's visual novel To Heart conveys a clear melancholic tone that bittersweetly contrasts with the peaceful backdrop. Another trend consisted of including narrative elements in the cover itself, therefore meta-contextualizing the imagery. This is the case with Boku 2, Bokura no Natsu's cover, whose imagery alludes to the main cast finally finding the treasure they were searching for in the story of the titular game. The medium was clearly booming, which in essence meant bigger games and bigger casts. This resulted in the need to highlight the central heroine, if there was one, while also keeping the rest relevant. An easy solution to this problem was to simply place the girl in the middle of the picture while also having everyone else look at the camera. This seems quite obvious, but at the same time, it raises the question, what happens when they aren't directly looking at the viewer, but instead are focused elsewhere? In such cases, the intent becomes clear. They want to remove the viewer from the picture, quite literally. Self-insert protagonists are fairly commonplace in the medium, especially so in the moe-ge genre. An idea deeply rooted in the covers themselves. The girls are looking at you. They are gesturing towards you. Even if there's no male character on the cover, you are an integral part of the scene. On the other hand, you have covers where they are clearly looking away, almost as if signaling that the story reaches far beyond what you, the viewer, can influence or control. This idea of rejecting the self-insert can also be seen in the automage side of visual novels, where not only is it not that rare to have the actual protagonist on the cover, but there are even examples, such as Jack Jean, where the cover is just the protagonist alone by herself. But this is just the tip of a much larger iceberg. What truly matters is how studios have shifted their marketing approach, from merely showcasing the contents of their games to emphasizing how those contents meet the needs of their players. This is a medium that has seen plenty of change throughout the years, and its branding strategies are merely a byproduct of its inherent identity.
Hey, what are you doing here, and where are all the actual paintings? Huh? Where did he go?
Whew, that was close. Anyway, don't take this video too seriously. I just kind of wanted to ramble about it for a bit. Well, the Saori incident did actually happen, although if you want to know more about it, I would recommend reading a proper article about it. I do think visual novel covers are an interesting topic though, but I guess if someone wanted to make an actual in-depth video, it would probably require an absurd amount of research, which I'm too lazy to do myself. On a side note, if I were to name some of my favorite covers, I think I would go with Asairo, Kusarihime, Bengaracho Hakubutshi, and Boku no Kanojo wa Gatenkei. Yes, I do actually think that mess of a cover art is pretty neat. Whatever the case, let me know if you too have any cover or covers that you especially like. But as always, thanks for watching. See you next time. Meirin out.